How could I possibly marry a man like you? My wife on the hospital bed glared at me with the eyes of 21-year-old, the gauze on her forehead making her face even paler. The doctor said her memory had regressed 7 years, precisely to the time before we met. As a lawyer, I calmly presented our marriage certificate, but she scoffed, claiming it was photoshopped. She dismissed our honeymoon photos, saying, "My taste was that bad?" When I mentioned divorce, a flicker of incomprehensible loss flashed in her eyes. Until that day, she was wearing my shirt, frying an egg in the kitchen, when she suddenly turned and asked, "Shen Yan, did I love you very much before?" Because the runny yolk was exactly how my 28-year-old self liked it. I rushed to the hospital, and loud arguing emanated from the ward. "Are you kidding? How could I marry a man I met on a blind date? Mom, have you lost your mind?" The voice was all too familiar when Shuyao, my wife. But now, her tone was filled with a sharpness and rebelliousness I hadn't heard in a long time. Through the partially open door, I saw her sitting on the hospital bed, her long black hair disheveled, and 4 drip attached to her right hand while she gestured excitedly with her left. Gauze covered her forehead, her face pale, but the anger in her almond-shaped eyes burned brightly. "Shuyao, calm down. Mother-in-law, Mrs. Su, tried to soothe her daughter. The doctor said you have a concussion. It's normal for your memory to be confused." "My memory is perfectly clear," when Shuyao interrupted her mother. "I was preparing for my final exams yesterday, and today I'm a 28-year-old company president and married." She scoffed. "At least make the story believable." I stood outside, holding tiramisu from her favorite dessert shop. 3 days ago, before her business trip, she'd asked me to buy it for her, saying she wanted to eat it when she returned. Now, it seemed this dessert was going to waste. My mother-in-law turned and saw me, a flicker of embarrassment and pity in her eyes. "Xiao Shan is here." Wen Shuyao followed her mother's gaze to the doorway. Her eyes lingered on me for a moment, clearly startled. I was wearing a dark gray suit, my tie slightly askew from rushing over. As a lawyer, I rarely allowed myself to appear so disheveled. "Who is this?" Wen Shuyao narrowed her eyes, a hint of curiosity amidst her wariness. My mother-in-law sighed. "This is Shen Yan, your husband. You've been married for 2 years." "Impossible." When Shuyao's voice suddenly rose. "My standards are that low? I'd fall for this." Her gaze swept over me. "Suit-wearing elite man." I gave a wry smile, placing the dessert on the bedside table, trying to keep my voice calm. "Shuyao, you fell down the stairs and hit your head. The doctor said you've lost your memory of the past few years." She stared at me for a few seconds, then suddenly laughed. "So, according to you, I'm 28 years old now, the CEO of one group, and also married to you." She pointed at me. "This Mr. Shun." I nodded. "Proof." I took our marriage certificate from my briefcase and handed it to her. As she flipped it open, I noticed her fingers trembling slightly. "Nice Photoshop job." She closed the certificate and tossed it back to me. "But I still don't believe it. I want to see my classmates. I want to see Professor Lin." Hearing Professor Lin's name, my heart sank. Professor Lin was her university mentor and also someone she had a crush on. In her 21-year-old memory, this feeling was probably still very fresh. "Shuyao, I tried to remain patient. You need to rest now. When you're feeling better, I'll arrange for you to see anyone you want." She snorted coldly and turned her face away. "I want a divorce." These 3 words stabbed into my heart like a knife. For 2 years, we had never mentioned this word. Even during the most heated arguments, this word was like some kind of taboo, never spoken. My mother-in-law looked at me worriedly, and I shook my head to signal that it was okay. "Okay," I heard myself say, "but not now. The doctor said you still need to be observed. When they confirm you've fully recovered, if you still want a divorce, I won't stop you." She turned her head, seemingly surprised by how readily I agreed. A flicker of emotion I couldn't understand flashed in her eyes. "Really? Really?" I nodded. "I guarantee it as a lawyer." She scrutinized me, as if judging the truth of my words. Just then, the nurse pushed the door open to change her dressing. Wen Shuyao's attention was diverted, and I took the opportunity to leave the ward. In the corridor, my mother-in-law followed me out. Xiao Shun, don't take it to heart. The doctor said her memory might slowly recover. Mom, I understand. I forced a smile. I'm just worried about her. What about the company? I've already contacted the vice president to act as a temporary replacement. My mother-in-law sighed. This child has been stubborn since she was young, and she was even more rebellious at 21. I didn't expect a fall to bring her back to that time. I nodded. I didn't actually know the 21-year-old Wen Shuyao. We met when she was 25, already a capable and elegant professional woman. That rebellious, stubborn girl only existed in the stories she occasionally told. And now, this unfamiliar Wen Shuyao was lying in the hospital ward, treating me like a liar who had suddenly barged into her life. My phone vibrated. It was a call from the law firm. I gestured to my mother-in-law and walked to the end of the corridor to answer. Lawyer Shun, about tomorrow morning's hearing. Postpone it, I said curtly. My wife is hospitalized. I need to take a week off. After hanging up, I looked through the glass window on the ward door. The nurse had left. Wen Shuyao was leaning against the pillows, staring blankly out the window. Sunlight streamed through the window, casting stripes of light and shadow on her face, making her look fragile and lonely. I suddenly remembered our first date 2 years ago. She was also looking out the window at the rain like this, her profile appearing particularly serene in the cafe's light. I was struck by that scene, thinking that every expression of this woman was worth remembering. And now, she only looked at me with strangeness and wariness. I took a deep breath and pushed the door open. Why are you back? She immediately put up her guard. I pulled a chair and sat beside her bed. Let's talk about the divorce. She raised an eyebrow, seemingly surprised that I would bring up the topic myself. First, I took out my tablet from my briefcase. This is Wen Group's financial report for the past 5 years and your employment records. As CEO, your signature and decision-making records are all here. She took the tablet and frowned as she browsed through it. Second, I continued. These are our wedding photos, honeymoon photos, and life record from the past 2 years. I swiped the screen, showing picture after picture. Us on the beach in the Maldives, her leaning on my shoulder, smiling. Us exchanging gifts in front of the Christmas tree at home. On her birthday, me smearing cake on her nose, her laughing and retaliating. Her finger paused on the screen, her gaze resting on a photo. Her in pajamas, hair disheveled, frying eggs in the kitchen, me hugging her waist from behind, my chin resting on her shoulder. In the photo, she looked back at me, her eyes full of tenderness. This can't be me, she whispered, but her tone was no longer so certain. Finally, I said softly, divorce requires both parties to negotiate the division of property. Our list of joint assets is here. I handed her a document. You can take a look. But the doctor recommends that you stay in the hospital for observation for at least a week. So during this time, we can talk things over. She looked up at me, a complex emotion flashing in her eyes. Why don't you look sad at all? This question caught me off guard. I lowered my eyes, concealing the turmoil within. Because I believe if you remember our past, you won't want a divorce. What if I can't remember? Then I will respect your choice. I raised my head, meeting her gaze directly. But before that, give me a chance, okay? Just as if getting to know a new friend. She was silent for a long time, finally nodding slightly. Okay, but don't expect me to suddenly fall in love with you, Lawyer Shun. Call me Shen Yan. I smiled. Or like you used to call me Yintai. She made a disgusted face. How could I give you such a cheesy nickname? You said my name was like an inkstone, dark and hard. I couldn't help but laugh. But after using it for a while, you'll know its value. She rolled her eyes, but the corners of her mouth turned up slightly. It seems my taste before amnesia was indeed questionable. Just then, her stomach suddenly growled. She blushed in embarrassment. I stood up and picked up the tiramisu box. Hungry? Although it might have melted. Her eyes lit up as she saw the logo on the box. From that shop in Xinjiang? You remember? I asked, surprised. Every Friday She stopped abruptly, frowning. Wait, how do I know that? Because you love that shop. I carefully opened the box. Every Friday after work, you would go out of your way to buy it. She stared at the slightly deformed dessert, a puzzled expression on her face. I seem to remember this taste. I handed her a small spoon. She hesitated for a moment, then took it and tasted a bite. Too sweet. She frowned, but dug in for another spoonful. But, strangely familiar. Watching her take small bites of the dessert, a warmth surged in my heart. Perhaps the fog of memory will gradually dissipate. Perhaps the Wen Shuyao who loved me will return. Or, even if she doesn't return, I can make this 21-year-old Wen Shuyao fall in love with me again. No matter what, I won't give up easily. The next morning, the doctor announced that Wen Shuyao could be discharged and go home to recuperate. As I helped her with the discharge procedures, she stood in the hospital lobby, nervously fiddling with the corner of her clothes. "What's wrong?" I returned with the discharge papers. "I'm a little scared," she whispered like a lost child. "What if that home is completely unfamiliar to me?" I gently took her hand. She instinctively tried to pull it back, but ultimately let me hold it. "I'll be with you, helping you get to know it again, step by step," I promised. "If you feel uncomfortable, tell me anytime." She nodded, a flicker of gratitude in her eyes. When we arrived at the parking lot, her eyes widened in surprise when she saw the white Porsche. "This is my car. Your 28th birthday present." I smiled, handing her the keys. "But it's best not to drive now. I'll be your chauffeur." She stroked the car door, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "Cool." Seeing her childish reaction, I couldn't help but smile. The 21-year-old Wen Shuyao was so adorable. As the car drove into our high-rise apartment in the city center, she leaned against the window, marveling at the city's transformation. "Wasn't there an old mall here? How did it become like this?" "It was demolished 5 years ago," I explained. "Now it's one of your favorite shopping districts." The elevator went straight to the top floor. When the door opened, revealing our spacious and bright apartment, she gasped. This is really my home." "Our home," I corrected, leading her inside. Like a child visiting a museum for the first time, she carefully touched every piece of furniture, every painting. "This style is indeed something I would choose," she commented, her fingers gliding over the leather surface of the sofa. "You designed most of it." I followed her, keeping a certain distance, not wanting her to feel pressured. She walked to the bookshelf and was surprised to find it filled with law books and business management books. "Are these all mine? The left side is yours, the right side is mine." I pointed them out to her. "After you finish your MBA, you studied basic law on your own, saying you wanted to better understand my work." She looked at me incredulously. "I was that driven?" "You always strive for perfection," I smiled. She continued to explore, suddenly stopping at the bedroom door. The bed was covered with light purple bedding, her favorite color. "We sleep here together." Her voice trembled slightly. "If you're not comfortable with it, I can sleep in the guest room," I said immediately. She breathed a sigh of relief and nodded. "Thank you." The next few days, I put aside my work and focused on helping her adapt to her new life. I took her on a tour of the company. The employees respectfully addressed her as President One. She appeared calm, but privately, her palms were sweating from nervousness. I taught her how to use the latest smartphones and computers. She learned quickly, but occasionally got frustrated when she couldn't remember a password. Every evening, we would sit on the balcony, and I would tell her the story of her past 7 years, how she rose from intern to CEO, how we met during a business negotiation, how she asked me out. "Wait a minute," she interrupted me. "I pursued you." I smiled and nodded. "You said you were attracted to my good looks." She made a gagging gesture. Impossible. But her ears turned quietly red. On the 7th night, I was in the study dealing with some work emails when she knocked on the door. "Can I come in?" "Of course." I closed my laptop. She was wearing pajamas, her hair still wet from a shower. She was clutching a pillow, looking uneasy. "What's wrong?" I asked. She bit her lower lip. "I had a nightmare. I dreamt I was in a strange place and no one knew me." My heart clenched. I got up and walked towards her, but restrained myself from touching her. Do you need me to talk to you? She nodded, and we went to the living room. She curled up in a corner of the sofa, and I sat at the other end, maintaining a safe distance. These past few days. Thank you so much, she said suddenly. You could have ignored me. You're my wife, I said simply. But to you, I'm a stranger now, right? She looked up at me, her eyes flickering with vulnerability, an imposter occupying your wife's body. I shook my head. No, you've just temporarily forgotten some things. But you're still you, intelligent, stubborn, striving for perfection. Just younger. She was silent for a moment, then suddenly asked, Shen Yan, if I never remember, what will you do? I considered this question seriously. I will pursue you again and make you fall in love with me again. Her eyes widened. Serious? Very serious. I looked directly into her eyes, because I love you, Wen Shuyao, whether you're 21 or 28. Her face flushed, and she quickly looked away. I went to bed, watching her fleeing figure. I sighed. Perhaps I was too blunt, but I didn't want to lie, nor did I want to hide my feelings. The next morning, I found her in the kitchen, clumsily frying eggs. Good morning, I greeted her from the doorway. She jumped, nearly dropping the spatula. And morning. Looking at the burnt eggs and scattered shells on the stove, I couldn't help but laugh. Need any help? No, she said stubbornly. I remember. You like runny eggs, right? I froze. Remember? She had her back to me, but I could see her ears turning red again. I just suddenly remembered. Don't make a big deal out of it. My heart raced. This was the first time she had actively remembered something about me. Breakfast wasn't exactly a success, but we still ate the slightly burnt eggs and slightly hard toast she had made. She nervously observed my reaction, while I pretended to eat with relish. Actually, you don't have to force yourself, she finally said. I smiled. But you made this especially for me. She lowered her head to drink her coffee, but I saw the corners of her mouth turn up slightly. That afternoon, an unexpected visitor disrupted our peace, Professor Lin, her university mentor and former crush. I was in the study when the doorbell rang. When I came out, I saw Wen Shuyao excitedly holding the hand of a middle-aged man. Professor Lin, you really came. The man smiled politely. I heard you had an accident, so I came to see you. Then he saw me and nodded politely. And this is... Wen Shuyao's smile faltered. This is Shen Yan, my... husband. I stepped forward and extended my hand. Hello, Professor Lin. Shuyao often speaks of you. Professor Lin shook my hand in surprise. Husband? Shuyao, you're married? When Shuyao's expression was complex, it seems to be true. Please come in. The next hour was torture for me. When Shuyao excitedly talked to Professor Lin about her university days, a past I wasn't a part of. The light in her eyes made my chest tighten. When Professor Lin mentioned that she had confessed to him after a thesis defense, I excused myself to make tea and left the living room. Standing in the kitchen, I took deep breaths to calm myself. I knew I shouldn't be jealous. It was part of her past. But the thought that she only had the memories of a 21-year-old, and those memories were filled with feelings for another man. Shen Yan, when Shuyao's voice came from behind me, are you all right? I turned around, forcing a smile. Of course. Is Professor Lin leaving? She shook her head. I'm walking him to the elevator. You don't look well. Just a little tired from work, I lied. She stared at me for a moment, then suddenly said, Professor Lin and I, that's all in the past. I looked up in surprise. Although I don't remember what happened between us, she continued, her voice soft. I know I wouldn't choose him now. Why? She bit her lip. Because you've been so good to me these past few days. And her voice trailed off. I think I'm starting to like you, Shen Yan. My heart skipped a beat. No rush, I said softly. We have plenty of time. She nodded, suddenly stood on tiptoe, kissed me lightly on the cheek, and then ran away. I stood there, touching the place where she had kissed me, feeling hope for the first time. Maybe without waiting for my memory to return, we could start over. 3 days after Professor Lin's visit, I started having strange dreams. In the dream, I was wearing a dark blue suit I would never choose, standing in front of a group of men in suits. talking eloquently. I held a laser pointer in my hand, and the PPT on the projector displayed complex financial data. My tone was calm and confident, completely unlike the 21-year-old me who was so nervous during class presentations. The quarterly growth rate reached 17%, mainly due to the expansion of the Asian market. I opened my eyes abruptly and found myself lying in bed. It was just getting light outside, and the alarm clock on the bedside table read 5:23. The dream felt too real. I sat up, beads of sweat on my forehead. It wasn't a dream, it was a memory. My brain was piecing together the missing fragments bit by bit. I tiptoed to the study and turned on the computer. The screen was still on the page I had been looking at yesterday, Wen Group's financial reports for the past 3 years. I clicked on a folder labeled Q3 Strategy Meeting, and sure enough, there was the PPT file. My hand started to tremble. I did remember that meeting, every number, and how I had refuted a director's question with data. Working so early? Shen Yan's voice came from behind, and I almost jumped out of my chair. He was standing at the door in his pajamas, his hair slightly messy from sleep, his eyes behind his glasses filled with concern. I remembered some things, I whispered. He took a few steps closer, but stopped at a distance that made me feel safe. Good or bad? I don't know. I looked up at him. I dreamt I was presiding over a board meeting, and when I woke up, I found that the meeting actually happened. I remember every detail, Shen Yan. His eyes lit up. This is a good sign, Shuyao. Your memory is returning. But it feels so strange. I rub my temples. It's like there are two different people living in my brain, the 21-year-old me and the 28-year-old me. They don't share memories, but they share the same body. Shen Yan nodded thoughtfully. Do you need me to contact the doctor? No. I shook my head. I just need time to adjust. He smiled slightly. Coffee. With milk, no sugar. I blurted out, then froze. That was the 28-year-old me's habit, while the 21-year-old me took her coffee with double sugar. Shen Yan obviously noticed this detail, but he just nodded and walked toward the kitchen, giving me space to think. Over the next few days, these memory flashbacks became more and more frequent. Sometimes, while showering, I would suddenly remember details of a business negotiation. Sometimes, seeing a certain piece of clothing in the wardrobe would instantly bring to mind the event I had attended wearing it. The strangest thing was, when I passed by the community garden, I suddenly remembered the scene 2 years ago when Shen Yan and I were walking there, and he held my hand for the first time. It felt like watching someone else's life video, yet I was absolutely certain it was my own. Shen Yan always maintained a proper distance, close enough to offer support, yet far enough not to make me feel pressured. He started going back to the office to deal with the backlog of work, but he came home on time every day, bringing my favorite food, patiently listening to me recount every recovered memory fragment. On Friday night, he came back later than usual. I was watching an old movie in the living room when I heard the key turn. Sorry, a client needed a last-minute consultation. He put down his briefcase and took off his suit jacket. Have you eaten? I shook my head, not hungry. He frowned. You've been eating very little lately. Company matters. I hesitated. I remembered some projects, and I'm a little worried. Shen Yan sat down on the single sofa next to me. Specifically? The Asia-Pacific expansion plan, I said. I remember working on an important contract before I lost my memory, but I can't remember the details. Shen Yan's expression became serious. Is it the collaboration with Japan's Matsumoto Group? Yes. I sat up straight. That's it. What stage is it at? The letter of intent has been signed, and the formal contract is scheduled to be signed next Wednesday. He pushed his glasses up. But don't worry. Vice President Lee is following up. I shook my head. No. I've always been personally responsible for this project. Mr. Matsumoto values personal relationships, and changing personnel at the last minute will make him feel undervalued. Shen Yan looked at me in surprise. You want to go back to work? I froze. Yes, I was actually considering returning to work. The 21-year-old me hadn't even had an internship, yet now I was confident that I could handle international collaborations. Am I crazy? I gave a wry smile. A week ago, I didn't even know which way the company door opened. Shen Yan laughed. No, this shows that your professional memory is recovering. If you're ready, I support you going back. His trust warmed my heart. But another thought suddenly popped up. Professor Lin. I mean, did I really like him in college? Shen Yan's smile faltered. Yes. You told me it lasted for almost a year, until graduation. And then you went to London for graduate school and met many outstanding people, broadened your horizons. His tone was calm. By the time we met, you hadn't mentioned him in a long time. I nodded, feeling a sense of relief for some reason. The next morning, my phone suddenly rang. The screen displayed Vice President Li. I hesitated for a moment, then answered, Hello, President Wen. It's so good you answered. Vice President Li's voice was full of anxiety. Mr. Matsumoto suddenly changed his itinerary and is arriving this afternoon. He said he wants to meet with you alone, first to discuss the contract details. I instinctively switched into work mode. What time? Where? 3 p.m., Shangri-La Hotel. But President Wen, your health. I'm fine, I said. Prepare all the documents and send them to my email. I'll be at the company in 2 hours. After hanging up, I turn around to find Shen Yan standing at the bedroom door, holding 2 suits. Black looks professional, but light gray is more approachable, he said calmly, as if he had anticipated all of this. Which one do you choose? My eyes suddenly felt hot. You aren't going to stop me. Why would I stop you from doing what you excel at? He smiled. Just promise me. If you feel unwell, stop immediately, okay? I nodded and hugged him. His body stiffened for a moment, then he gently hugged me back. Thank you, I whispered. Black or gray? He asked in my ear. I laughed through my tears. Gray. 3 hours later, I stood in front of the One Corporation headquarters building, my heart pounding. Shen Yan insisted on driving me, but refused to accompany me inside. This is your battlefield. The elevator went straight to the 28th floor. As soon as the door opened, all the employees stood up. Good morning, President Wen. Welcome back, President Wen. You look well, President Wen. I smiled and nodded, tried to hide my inner panic. Vice President Li came forward and quickly reported the situation. Walking into the office, a sense of familiarity washed over me. Every ornament, the position of every book was exactly the same as in my memory. All the documents are ready. Vice President Li handed me a folder. But President Wen, Mr. Matsumoto's sudden early arrival seems to have another purpose. I opened the file, and my business instincts suddenly awakened. He's hesitating. Other companies are contacting him. Vice President Li looked at me in surprise. How did you know? The changes to the terms are too significant. I pointed to several revisions. These points were originally very favorable to us. Now they all lean towards them. Matsumoto isn't someone who's greedy for small gains, unless someone has offered better terms. He's giving us a final chance to match. Vice President Li finished my sentence. I nodded, then remembered something. Check who has contacted the Matsumoto group recently. Especially Lin Enterprises. Vice President Li's eyes widened. You even guessed that? Lin Enterprises did last week. My stomach cramped. Professor Lin's Enterprise. He wasn't just visiting me. The afternoon meeting was as difficult as I expected. Mr. Matsumoto politely but firmly put forward multiple amendment requests. With my suddenly restored professional knowledge and negotiation skills, I barely managed to retain the core interests, but had to concede on some minor clauses. Miss One, Mr. Matsumoto said at the end of the meeting, I'm glad to see you've recovered. To be honest, I was worried that changing personnel would affect our cooperation, but your performance today proves that my worries were unnecessary. I smiled in acknowledgement, but my heart was full of doubt. Why would Professor Lin interfere with this project? The answer was revealed that evening. As soon as I got home, I received a text message. Shuyao, I heard you went back to the company today. Seems like you've recovered well. Free to chat? Regarding the Matsumoto project, I have a better proposal. Lin. Shen Yan poked his head out of the kitchen. How did the negotiations go? Not bad. I put down my phone, but Professor Lin is definitely up to something. Shen Yan's expression turned serious. He contacted you? I nodded and showed him the message. Shen Yan's brow furrowed deeper and deeper. What is he trying to do? I asked, puzzled. Shen Yan took off his glasses and rubbed the bridge of his nose. Lin Enterprises has expanded rapidly in the past 2 years, but their capital chain has always been tight. The Matsumoto project is crucial for them. So he came to see me, not for a reunion, but, my voice trembled, to assess whether I still remember the project. Shen Yan didn't answer directly, but his silence spoke volumes. I felt a wave of nausea. The teacher I admired and adored at 21 was actually exploiting my amnesia for commercial gain. I'm going to see him tomorrow, I said suddenly. Shen Yan looked up sharply. What? I want to ask him face to face. I gritted my teeth. If he wants to play business games, I'll play along. Shen Yan walked up to me and held my shoulders with both hands. Shuyao, you're emotionally unstable right now. This isn't a good idea. I'm very calm. I shook off his hands. This is my company's business, Shen Yan. I have the right to handle it. A flash of hurt crossed his eyes, but he quickly regained his composure. Of course. Just be careful. That night, we slept in separate rooms for the first time. I tossed and turned, 2 voices arguing in my head. One saying to trust Shen Yan's intuition, the other insisting on confronting Professor Lin myself. The next day at noon, I met Professor Lin at the appointed restaurant. He was still elegant and refined, but now I could see calculation in his smile. Shuyao, you look well. He pulled out a chair for me. I heard you met with Matsumoto yesterday. I went straight to the point. Why interfere with my project? He feigned surprise. I'm just providing a better option. Shuyao, you're in an unstable state now. Sticking to the original terms is not good for the company. So you're thinking of me? I sneered. He sighed. To be honest, Shuyao, it pains me to see you like this. Shen Yan doesn't understand your work at all, yet he tries to control your decisions. He didn't control me. I interrupted him. He respects my choices, even if he doesn't agree with them. Professor Lin shook his head. You've changed, Shuyao. You would never have let personal feelings influence your business judgment before. No, I looked him straight in the eye. I finally understand what's more important. The conversation ended unhappily. As I left the restaurant, my head began to ache intensely, and countless fragmented images flashed before my eyes. Shen Yan defending me at the board meeting, the late-night snacks he brought me during overtime, his comfort when I failed in negotiations for the first time. These memories flooded back like a tide, and I had to lean against the wall to steady myself. My phone rang. It was Shen Yan. Shuyao. His voice was full of worry. Where are you? I went to your company. They said you. Shen Yan. I interrupted him, my voice trembling. I remember everything. Silence on the other end for a few seconds. Where are you? I'll come get you. No. I took a deep breath. Tell me the address. I'll come to you. I have something to tell you. Half an hour later, I stood in front of the law firm. Shen Yan was waiting for me at the door, his suit impeccable, but his tie askew, obviously hastily put on. I walked towards him, my heart pounding. With each step, more memories returned. The way he nervously knocked over a glass of water on our first date. His clumsy attempts to bake me a birthday cake that ended in a kitchen disaster. Him silently massaging my shoulders when I was stressed from work. By the time I finally stood before him, tears blurred my vision. Shen Yan, I whispered, our wedding ring. I put it in the bottom drawer of the dresser, right? His eyes widened. You really remember? I nodded, tears streaming down my face. Everything. She looked me up and down. A suit wearing elite? By the window, Shen Yan's eyes were red too, but he just softly asked, Are you sure you remember everything? Nothing missing. I shook my head, then pulled the wedding ring I had refused to wear from my pocket and slowly slipped it back onto my left ring finger. I remember the most important things, like the fact that I love you. The next second, I was pulled into a warm embrace. Shen Yan held me tightly, his chin resting on my head. I felt him tremble, heard his heart beating like a drum. Welcome home, Wen Shuyao, he whispered in my ear. I looked up at him, stood on tiptoe, and kissed his lips. The kiss was both familiar and strange, like a reunion after a long absence, and like the first time we met. When we finally parted, Shen Yan cupped my face in his hands. So, about the divorce. No way. I laughed, wiping away my tears. Marrying you was the best decision I ever made, Shen Yan. Even amnesia couldn't change that. He smiled and kissed my forehead. Shall we go home then? Home. I took his hand. But first, tell me, was 21-year-old me difficult to deal with? Shen Yan pretended to think for a moment. A little rebellious, yes, but very cute. Liar. I squeezed his hand. I hated you back then. But you love me now, he said smugly. I shook my head, smiling, my heart filled with warmth. Yes, whether 21 or 28, whether memories existed or not, my heart always knew who to love. The first thing I did when I got home was tear up the draft divorce agreement stuck on the fridge, the one Shen Yan had prepared on the first day of my amnesia to give me the freedom to choose. Don't need this anymore, I said, tossing the paper into the shredder. Shen Yan hugged me from behind. You know, while you had amnesia, I discovered an important truth about our marriage. What? Even without memories, even if we started over, I would still fall in love with you. He kissed the top of my head. That's what matters most. I turned to face him, caressing his familiar features. And I would choose you again and again, whether I remember why or not. Outside the window, the sun was setting, casting a golden glow over our home. In this space, refilled with memories and love, I finally found my complete self. Not just the impulsive and passionate girl of 21, nor just the capable and strong CEO of 28, but the complete Wen Shuyao, loved by Shen Yan.